Welcome to Leveraging Your Reality, where mindset meets movement. I'm Siobhan Terrell Camper, your realignment coach and partner in growth. This channel is for leaders, parents, and people who want to stop surviving and start showing up as a healthier version of themselves in life and relationships and leadership. If you're ready to align with your truth and elevate, you're in the right place. Today, I'm going to bring you a topic that came up in a coaching session, and it is one that has come up several times. And I'll hit a few points with it. Let's get to it. So, it is easy for past narratives to hold us back and prevent us from evolving and or changing. And this is where I think it's so important for people to know the difference between coaching and therapy and which one is needed. When it comes to therapy, it's two reasons people typically go to therapy. One, therapy deals with the clinical concerns, high levels of anxiety, high levels of depression, PTSD, trauma, eating disorders. So clinical concerns, automatically therapy related. The other category where therapy covers is past to present based conversations. You flip that over, coaching covers present to future based conversations. And I want to give you an example of what that looks like. So, if someone is going to both therapy and coaching, for example, and I think both are healthy to have at different points in your life, depending on where you are. Let's say someone's going to therapy for their romantic relationship. In therapy, they will talk about what is the history of that romantic relationship, what's the history of how they have done romantic relationships, how did they first see and encounter romantic relationships from growing up as a child. So oftentimes therapy is focused on the why and understanding your history and how your history is impacting your present. Now, that same person is going to coaching for the same exact topic. In coaching, it will change. It'll be more about what type of romantic relationship do you want to have? And you'll be working with your coach to intentionally set yourself up to be in that type of relationship by evolving and changing in all the ways that you need to evolve and change to have space for that type of relationship. I know when people have stayed in therapy for a very long time and not transitioned over to coaching, because what happens is they are very clear on why they are showing up the way they are, and they have a whole story behind it. They literally understand the narrative in the story. And they come into coaching oftentimes reminding themselves of that narrative, of that story. And we are so committed to being right as humans that consciously and subconsciously, we do things to prove ourselves right. So if you are rehearsing this story in your head, not one that you necessarily want to be true, you are in your mind working to keep that story in its truth. And that will prevent you from making the changes or evolutions that you want to make in your life. So the purpose of therapy when you're coming from, when it's outside of the clinical component, is to have a better understanding of why. Once you understand that why, and you could connect it to how it's showing up in your life today, and you still want to work on that topic, it's actually now time to transition into coaching, because therapy has done its job from past to present. There's clear understanding there. Now that coaching side comes in where it's going from present to desired future. And here is where you actually make the changes and evolutions that you want to see. Therapy is not about making a whole lot of changes, but what happens is from understanding deeper, naturally we tend to change and evolve. This is a natural byproduct of deeper understanding. Now, when you come over into coaching, it is intentionally about changing and evolving so that you could get these outputs that you want to get. I really challenge, I'm always sending out challenges. I really challenge you to question if you're in therapy, question some of the topics that you're talking about in therapy. If you understand it and you understand how it impacts you today, it may be time to take that topic from therapy now into coaching if you want to create a different outcome for yourself. Really monitor yourself there and understand, like, not everything has to be spoken about in the areas where you are receiving help. And it's important to know when it's time to evolve into a different type of conversation. So back to this point about past narratives holding you back. If my example of cooking is such a good one with this, because I had created a story of, I don't like cooking. Cooking is chaotic, it's stressful. And for all these years, I have proven myself right. I had to keep that true and prove it right. So whenever I went to go cook after work for the kids, it was always chaotic and stressful. And I wasn't willing to evolve my relationship with cooking. I evolved my relationship to cooking by mistake, but if I had been intentional about it, I would have noticed the resistance. I've said this before, that when there is resistance somewhere, usually a growth opportunity is somewhere within that resistance. Because when you're having resistance with something, oftentimes there is a mismatch either between what you believe about this situation and the narratives you're telling yourself and the actions that you're showing and or the evidence that you see. That's what's causing the friction. And whenever there's friction, we just try to just get rid of it. Everyone's usually trying to just get rid of stuff. Before we go getting rid of anything, I highly recommend understanding first. Because if you don't understand what's causing the friction, how did it lead to that, there is a high chance of you repeating the same thing all over again because you didn't take time to understand it. And you'll be boomeranging right back to that situation, whether it's you and another person, you by yourself, you'll end up in the same thing. So if you find yourself constantly in the same scenarios, a big part of it has to do with there may have not been much time for understanding or your end. And sometimes we don't want to take the time to understand ourselves at deeper levels, but that's part of being in a healthy relationship with you. Something that we don't often like to admit or recognize is, one, we are in a relationship with ourselves. It is an actual relationship. Just like you're in a relationship with your partner, your family, your friends, your coworkers, you are also in a relationship with you. If you don't treat yourself like you're in a relationship with you, anything's liable to happen while interacting with yourself. The other piece is, for many people, the relationship with themselves is one of the most abusive relationships that they've ever experienced. I know. Just sit with that for a second. For many people, the relationship with themselves is one of the most abusive relationships that they've ever experienced. And for many reasons, we justify treating ourselves in these abusive, unhealthy ways when if it was another relationship, we either wouldn't tolerate it or would know that it's not right. But when it comes to the relationship with ourselves, we will justify it and make it okay when it's not. And that's why I'm so big on it is important to have a relationship with yourself, because when you're in a relationship in general, you can call out when things are healthy and not healthy. Immediately, like, wow, the way that didn't go, that something wasn't right there. You may not know exactly what it is every time, but you're able to call out something was off. I'm not sure what it was, but it was off. But if you don't consider being in an actual relationship with yourself, when things happen, it's just like, oh, that's just the way it is. That's just how I am. And we justify these unhealthy and sometimes abusive approaches and interactions and treatment with ourselves. And hey, at some point, we've all abused ourselves in some type of way. It's a matter of understanding in what ways have I been abusive with myself. And if you sit and you think about it for a good amount of time, you'll be able to see the places where it's like, And it's not always to the level of abuse in every single topic, but there may just be certain areas where you are really hammering down on yourself. Most of the behaviors that we have, they're not permanent. They're just well-worn habits that seem permanent because they come so naturally. I read this really, really great book by Benjamin Hardy. It's called Personality Isn't Permanent. And this book really challenged the way that I looked at personality and opened up my perspective. Now, when I read books, I like to read from a place of opening my understanding, my way of looking at things, challenging myself. It's not always about is the author right or is the author wrong. It's more so about how is what this author has to say. How will it help me to evaluate things from a perspective that I might not have considered? And this book, Personality Isn't Permanent, he was he was just talking about how things can seem permanent because you've done it for so long, so it's your natural default. And if you keep defaulting to something over and over again, you start to own this is just the way I am. And it's like if you practice something different, as long as you practice that other thing, most likely you will make a change and that new thing will be the normal way of operating. So in all the places when we're like, oh no, a good one is introversion and extroversion. People are like, oh no, I'm an introvert. I've always been an introvert. This is just the way I am. And it's like, yeah, you've been practicing introversion for a really long time, so it's the way you've become. COVID really opened my eyes to this one because I was an extreme extrovert before COVID. And we fast forward now, I probably lean a good amount on the introversion side, and I need a whole lot more time with myself than I've ever needed in my life. So with many things, it's not either I am this or I am that. Oftentimes it's a scale, and sometimes we've leaned so far to one side of the scale that we believe that is the only way. That is just the way I am. It's just the way I've always been. It's like, no, it's just because you've practiced over and over and over again, and it creates this belief that that is the only way that you are. This brings me to another topic that came up in a recent coaching conversation around the difference between changing and evolving. I just want to clarify these because oftentimes we are trying to focus on change and evolving gets underrated and underutilized. And I say very often it's not about right or wrong. Is this right? Is this wrong? It's what's appropriate based off the situation. So the difference between changing and evolving. Change is something old that is removed and a new thing has replaced it. Evolving is when that thing stays there, but you are not only defaulting to it. You have given yourselves options and you go to that when it's more appropriate. Many times we don't want to change things. We want to evolve them. So, for example, a big one people want to change is anxiety. They're like, oh my gosh, I just want to get rid of it. I'm tired of it. It's driving me crazy. Anxiety is an emotion, and we need anxiety in crisis situations because it helps us to react. But what tends to happen is that anxiety is showing up more frequently than it should, and then essentially showing up inappropriately. And if anxiety is showing up inappropriately, then it's overused. It's an overused emotion. So when you think about evolve, like we don't want to change it, because change it means like we remove it and something else has replaced it and anxiety doesn't exist in our life anymore. No, we want anxiety to be there. We just don't want it to be our default in all situations or just situations that are inappropriate. What we want to do is evolve our anxiety so that it's showing up when it's appropriate, but we're not defaulting to it all the time. There are many things that are happening in your life where you're like, I need to change it, get it out, get this out, get something new in there. No, that approach is probably helpful. You just can't lean on it in most situations or every situations. And a good personal example of this is I'm a pretty direct communicator. I'm not the greatest at beating around the bush. Say what I gotta say when I have to say it and call it a day. And for years, I've told myself, well, I'm a direct communicator. Like, I'm a straight shooter. You get it as it is and go on about your business. If you don't want to know, don't ask me. And that was me telling myself a narrative over and over again, and me also resisting evolving. And I remember when I worked with an amazing group of people at Fayetteville Tech Community College, and we did a workshop on communication styles. And they gave me feedback that sticks with me to this day. And I also share this concept with other people because I think it's real. And their feedback was, Siobhan, you are a very direct communicator. And we like to describe your communicator as a knife. But the problem is, for most situations, you are using a butcher knife approach. And everything doesn't need a butcher knife style of communication. And I was like, there are butter knives, there's utility knives, there are paring knives, there are different types of knives. And it would be really helpful if you were thoughtful about the knife that you bring to the conversation versus only bringing a butcher knife. Man, that is some of the most golden feedback that I've ever gotten in my life. And it went from, no, I'm just a direct communicator, AKA you only get a butcher knife from me, to, okay, what does this person need from me? And what is the best communication approach to bring for this given situation? So I had to stop telling myself that same story in order to give myself space to evolve. Now, let's be clear. It wasn't about, let me get rid of this butcher knife. All it does is cause harm. I don't want it in my life anymore. No, we don't want to get rid of the butcher knife, because let me tell you, there are real butcher knife situations. And I need to butcher stuff up in communication real direct. So it's not about, let me get rid of this butcher knife. It's more about, let me use a butcher knife when a butcher knife is needed. Oh, this is more of a butter knife situation. Butter knives are about spreading things out nice and evenly. And a younger version of myself would have thought that this was being inauthentic. Because no, that's my approach. It's like, it's not being inauthentic. It's still you talking. That's you. And it's this point of being empathetic and being understanding of the person that's on the other side of you. Great example of this when it comes to talking to young kids, 1 year old. Even when we talk to infants, we don't talk to them in our adult voice as we're talking to another adult. We naturally change up our whole tone, our whole energy. We're like, oh my goodness, the little baby. Say hi to the baby. Hey, baby. Everything changes automatically. Is that you being inauthentic because you didn't talk the way you typically talk to adults? No, you pulled out a different approach. And it is so healthy to give ourselves options. A lot of times we're creating conflict and misalignment in our lives because we are using one approach for every situation. And naturally, if you use the same approach for every situation, there will be multiple situations where that approach wasn't ideal. But when you begin to give yourself options, and you can look and say, all right, what's appropriate for this situation? I have options. So when you have people that are constantly disrupting things and they constantly do this and they constantly do that, oftentimes that is an example of a person who lacks options. If they're always arguing, okay, you lack options in communication. You only know this style of communicating. If they can't keep a home space clean a certain way, oh, you lack options in cleanliness and organizing. Let's give you some more options. So when you look at your kids in certain situations, when you look at your employees in certain situations, when you look at your partner in certain situations, oftentimes it is a lack of options that they keep giving you that same approach. They don't know better yet. Oftentimes, when we know better, we do better. But there are so many things, especially around relationships and human communication and interacting, that we are informally educated on. And when we have an issue, we tend to just try to change it instead of taking time to understand. I ask all the time to my clients when they're like, I don't know. My next question is usually, hey, when you don't know, how do you find out? For many people, they say, oh, I look it up, I research it. And I'm like, how about you research that topic? You learn about that topic so that you can better understand the topic and apply it to your life. Learning is lifelong, and most of the learning that we do, it is really informal. If you find yourself constantly struggling with a certain topic, question, when's the last time I took time to learn about this topic? If your answer is, I don't know, or I haven't, stop trying to change things, pause that, and go learn about it. Because once you read some books on it, or you go to some webinars on it, or you listen to some podcasts about it, then from there, when you go to make changes, you will most likely have options, and it'll be more about evolving versus trying to get rid of something. It's one of the things we really fail to do in adulthood is learn about the topics that have us stumped. Like if you are stumped on finances, go read some books on finances. If you're stumped on communication and have conflict there, go read some books on communication. And you have to find your version of learning. I say books because I like to read, but books may not be your thing. Find a way that you like to learn and help yourself learn about that topic. When I found myself having friction with my kids, you know what I did? I went and found some books on parenting, and I found different types of ones and read different types of ones. And remember, these books are not about this is the only right one way to do it. No, it's about giving yourself options. And oftentimes, with our one mind, we can't come up with all the options that we could choose from. But when we expose ourselves to different ways of thinking, different approaches, it naturally expands our options. Will all options that are presented for you work? Absolutely not. That guaranteed they won't. But you find the ones that will. And it takes time. Like you have to experiment. Like take time and experiment with the different options. See, hey, is that an option that works for me? Is that an option that works in this situation? It may or may not be, but if you're not taking time to first learn the options and then experimenting with the options to find what resonates for you, what aligns for you, then naturally you're stuck with what you've always been doing. And if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always had. Remember, growth isn't always easy, but when we do it together, it becomes possible. If you found this valuable, hit subscribe, share it with someone who's on the journey of growth too. We don't grow alone, people. We grow together. Until next time, keep showing up and keep leveraging your reality.